Thank you for joining me for today's episode of Entrepreneur Encounters. In today's interview, I want to talk with Angela Kallay, the founder of not one, but two different businesses, C21 Benefit Realty and Dream Vacations. So you're in for a treat today. I'm going to start off by asking Angela, how does she get started in business in general? Let's hear her answer.
So it was not intentional to own a business, although, it might have been unavoidable just based on character traits and things that I have. But I started in real estate in 2005. That was kind of when HGTV was just kind of starting and like getting going. And I was finding myself kind of getting interested in those shows. I was out of college getting married and working at a radio station, working third shift. And I would just find myself going through shorewest.com, looking at all the pictures of the houses and, I'm getting married. So I'm thinking about having kids, all these things. And I had this glorified image in my head of what it would be like to be a realtor. I'd work from home. I'd be flexible with my schedule and it would allow me to kind of be this present mom that I wanted to be. It is not like that at all, but that was my thought process going into it. But at the end of the day, I just knew I didn't want a boss. I like to be in control of my time. I think I'm a pretty smart person. I like learning and I like being coached, but at my direction and my discretion, not because somebody is telling me what I need to do. Probably a definite flaw in my personality, but here we are. So that was my intention, was to really have control over my career, my time, and not have somebody tell me what to do or limit the capacity of what I could earn. That was big for me. For me, the sky was the limit, and I wanted to not have anybody hold me back.
Did you hear that? The sky's the limit. She didn't want to have anyone holding her back. She wanted to control her own destiny. Folks, this is a super common theme. And interestingly, it can be a common theme even when you're in the executive level working for another company. There are some of us who are just wired to not necessarily want to follow the path that everyone else has gone down. It's one of the great traits that allows businesses to be growth businesses because we know we have to do things differently. There's an opportunity to overcome. There's a problem that can be solved, but we're not going to be able to do it on someone else's watch. This is something we hear all the time at MKA Business Coach. Angela wanted flexibility. She wanted something that was going to be a good fit for her personality. And I know many of you are nodding your heads right now. And frankly, I'm nodding my head too. It's part of the reason I got into doing what I do. So I wanted to ask Angela about those early days, what it was like taking over the real estate business and really diving in. Let's listen to her response.
I started my career in real estate at ShoreWest Realtors. I thought they're a great company. It wasn't a good fit for me and my personality and my need to kind of think outside the box and do things a little bit differently. I came to this company, um, and then in 2010, the owner told me he wanted to move to Tennessee with his family and get out of real estate. And I can't blame him. Nights, weekends, no insurance, all of the things. But at that time, I was the only full-time agent with the company. I was getting all the leads. I was doing really well. And I didn't want anything to change. So initially, when he asked if I wanted to buy the company, I just said no. Like, why would I want to change this? This is great. And then the more I thought about it, I thought, if he sells it to somebody else, they could change it. I really believe strongly in our business model and what we were doing. So I didn't want somebody to come and change it. Or I'd have to go find another company. And at the time, there was nobody else out there who was doing what we were doing. And that was offering full service listings at what would historically be considered a lower price. The term discount was used a lot at that time. We don't use that anymore. Personally, at my company, I just bought the company from him to maintain the status quo for myself so that I wouldn't have to change. And I think a lot of small business owners would probably tell you there's a lot more that goes into running a small business than you realize. And found myself immediately thinking, and now I'm a full-time realtor and I'm a business owner. It added a whole nother level of responsibility and things that I didn't realize I'd have to take on, naively. And that's how I ended up with Benefit Realty. And then most recently, last fall, we affiliated with C21.
All right, everyone, raise your hand if you can identify with Angela here. There's always a lot more that goes on to running a business, running a department than oftentimes we realize. And folks, that's absolutely why we must figure out what our strengths are. We have to know what we're good at. In my career coaching, I've worked with hundreds of people who are amazing. They're great at their skill, craft, or trade. That's not generally the challenge. If they're not making a good product or service, then there's not really much of a business there. But for those who are and are growing to a certain point, all of a sudden there's a need to be able to build around and actually build an amazing business that goes with that. That's when we need to find other people to help shore us up. Sometimes it's finding great employees, but our experience has been you need to find a great consultant, counselor, coach to help you along that path. So if that's something we can do to help you along, do reach out to us, but know where your constraints are and know where you need to reach out and get additional support. Don't keep faking it till you make it. It's going to be critical that you get the support so that you can get off that plateau and continue growing. So I went on to ask Angela, what did she change at the business when we took it over? This can be one of the hardest parts. We have a lot of ideas, a lot of thoughts. Sometimes when you take pieces apart, it may break. Sometimes you need to break it in order to be able to hit the next growth stage. Let's hear what she says.
So when I took over, my big thing was I think that the full service, lower commission model is the future of the real estate industry. And I felt that the limited service options were diluting the value that we brought to our full service listings. And so when I took over, I really wanted to hone in on just the full service listings, and we phased out those other options. So I'd rather do one thing really, really well than spread too thin and not really be able to identify who is our ideal customer here, who is our client. It was just too many options. So I thought, this is the future. This is where we're going to go. And that was a big milestone for us. Bringing on agents was a huge milestone for me. It kind of started happening naturally. Initially, people saw what we were doing, they liked what we were doing, and they approached me about being part of it. So that was big to bring on agents. And now I go from just being a full-time agent to also now being a manager and a trainer and a coach and all of the things that go along with that.
Folks, this completely bears repeating, so I'm going to do it. Whatever you do, make sure you do one thing really, really well. Again, you need to be great at your skill, craft, or trade. We're not going to be able to do all things for all people, but we want to find that right fit for our ideal client, our ideal customer, that person who absolutely must have what we have. It allows us to stand out. It allows us to be different. It allows us to focus in really, really closely on what we want other people to know about us and how we're going to be different. Who's likely to buy from us? Who wants our products and service? What problems does our product solve? This is so critical because eventually we start really thinking in terms of features and items. And because I'm good at it, this is what people like to love. And we start to get a little bit disconnected with our customers. Again, it worked to get us to one certain growth point, but all of a sudden, perhaps we're plateauing because we haven't taken the opportunity to reanalyze what that looks like. This is something we've worked with businesses that we focused on, remembering what it is that we're solving, why we're in there, and what those people want. For Angela, she knew that she was not looking for budget homeowners who just want to spend the least amount possible. With that said, she recognized that there's something not right with the commission model and designed a product that was able to thread that needle and hit her target customers exactly where they wanted to be reached, where they needed to be reached, where they were ready to say, I want you to have my business. Wouldn't you like that too? I think it's an amazing thing. Well done, Angela. So I went on to ask Angela about the decision to enter into franchise agreement with C21. Anyone who's ever gone down the road of looking at a franchise has probably had to really wrestle with this question. So listen up and hopefully we can learn a few things along the way.
I started talking with C21 4 years ago. They approached me. My biggest thing was I said, I believe in what we're doing. I believe in our business model. I believe in our offerings, and I'm not going to change that. And I had this impression that they would want me to adapt and change to a more traditional business model. I told them I wouldn't. And if they wanted to still continue the conversation, we could. And they said, Angela, you're doing a good job. You're successful. Why would we want to change that? Whatever you're doing is working. And 4 years later, here we are. But there was a long process because it's a big deal. Most recently, I own a travel agency as well. That was started about 1.5 years, 2 years ago. And it was really seeing a franchise in action. I bought a travel agency franchise. Myself and my best friend and my sister went in together. And it was seeing the franchise at work. seeing the support, seeing the system, seeing the tools. And I thought, oh my God, I'm doing this all on my own at Benefit. Maybe I need to talk to C21 again. They like what we're doing. They're not going to make me change. And if I can provide all of these tools and resources to our clients and to our agents, why wouldn't I explore that opportunity?
All right. The value of a franchise is and should be their ability to deliver a process that works. You're buying into a name brand, you're buying into some marketing, but you should be also buying into the processes that work and ready to implement those processes. The goal is that you can hit the ground running because they have already hit some of the bumps and the hurdles and figured out what works ideally best for that target customer we just talked about. That's what you're buying, right? You want to save yourself a little bit of those blood, sweat, and tears by going along that route, right? So if you're evaluating a franchise, I want you to be sure to look at that. I've run into some folks, and when they got a franchise, I'm not entirely convinced that they got a lot of process. Maybe they got a marketing, they got some name, but there's a huge amount of value in that process. For businesses to be able to grow, that is going to be one of the biggest keys at some point. Without those repeatable processes, as you add more people, you're not going to be able to make it work. Now, if you think that you can do the same thing or you can do it better, then perhaps this franchise isn't exactly what you need to look at. Either way, all businesses should design their processes to look like a franchise operation. In our experience, when we work with businesses, particularly ones that are a little bit bigger, when you are really struggling to figure out how to grow and get rid of some of the inefficiencies and the bumps along the way, and you've got employees who are really struggling with repeating outcomes that you want to have over and over, it is likely because the processes aren't really there. They're maybe not repeatable. They're not documented. There's lots of pieces that need to be taken a look at in order to be successful. So I went ahead and asked Angela, what are some of the similarities between the two businesses she has? Her response is really interesting. Let's listen.
I don't think I realized going in to the travel business how similar the two businesses really are. For one, both businesses have an aspect that a lot of consumers think, well, why do I need you? You know, there's definitely sellers and buyers who feel like, oh, they can do it all online. And similarly with travel. So both industries really come down to service and standing behind the value that you bring and translating that to something that people can see in real time, hands on. What is that going to do for their life, right? The research that goes behind it, the analyzing of the data. It's interesting. I met with a prospective seller the other day, and what stood out to her that she shared with me was, yes, you had all the data that every other listing agent brought that we met with, but I had a take on it that was really, how are we going to use the data? The data is great, but if you don't know what to do with it, it's pointless, right? So it's, let's look through this data. How are we going to use this data to market your home the most efficiently, effectively? And that's where our expertise comes in. And that's where the value comes in. And statistically, if you list your home with a realtor, you are going to get more money for your home because you're expanding your marketing to a larger base. And that's just economics, right? Both industries are highly personal. They're both huge investments. I mean, sometimes people are going on once in a lifetime trips and they are spending what some people make in a year on a trip. You can't mess that up. Similarly with a home sale, it sounds very cliche and sometimes it actually bugs me when I hear people say it, but I'm going to say it. It's a lot of times somebody's biggest investment or their equity is their retirement or it is their savings. It's very important for them to get as much out of it as they possibly can. You need somebody who is going to be trustworthy with that investment in both spaces. So it's about relationships and earning that trust. I had a prospective client tell me once, I don't just give trust, you have to earn it. And that has stuck with me. And that, I think that was probably 7 years ago. I think a lot of that goes back to testimonials because I can only say so much. We on our website, for example, we just have hundreds and hundreds of testimonials from the past 15 years from clients who will say it for us. Like, don't take my word for it, but here are people who are in your same situation and they thought we did a great job.
Angela recognizes that people are buying a relationship from her. This is really, really hard, I think, for a lot of service providers to grasp. We're thinking about the end result that we're actually providing. In this case, it would be, I'm going to help you be able to get a house or take a vacation. That is not what people are ultimately buying. They're buying a relationship with her. They need that trust. They're buying comfort. The essence of that relationship creates the comfort level that allows the process to go forward. Then I'm interested for you in your product or service. What is it that you are actually selling that's different from what you're selling, if you know what I mean? What is the thing behind your thing that says this is why people are buying it? And that's why we always have to go back to what problem are you solving so that we make sure it's positioned that way. Secondly, she recognized that she had to have a unique value proposition. She had to position her product uniquely and differently from other providers who are out there. For her, it's understanding her clients' unique needs and having ideas on how to use that data to get the best outcomes for her clients. So ultimately, even though she has two businesses that seem different on the surface, the way she approaches them and how she solves those problems for her clients ends up being very similar. When you look at it, the secret sauce is usually a couple layers down and something that we work often with our businesses that we consult with. What is that true secret sauce? And are we presenting that out front so that people know it? So I went on to ask Angela, where does she get her clients from? Let's listen to what she says.
So something that I always tell my agents is if you've been a realtor for 5 years and you are still prospecting every day, you did something wrong the first 5 years. Either you didn't service them well enough that they want to come back to you, or you didn't stay in touch with them so they forgot about you. So it's one, you have to provide the best service that you can so that they want to call you back and refer you to friends and family. And you have to constantly remind them that you're still here. Everybody probably knows 5 realtors, but who is going to be top of mind when somebody asks for a referral or is talking about selling their house? They have to be excited to say, oh, you have to call Angela, call somebody at Benefit. It's all about servicing. I feel like if you are doing your job correctly, the business will come organically as long as you remind them that you're still doing this, right? And saying thank you, asking people to refer to you. Now, there are definitely still agents who've been in the business for 20 years who are still on the phone for 2 hours in the morning making cold calls. I mean, if that's something that you want to do to continue to grow your business, I'm not going to tell you no if it's successful for you, but if you've been in business for 20 years, people should just be calling you without you doing anything and then continue to service those clients. I'm not going to pretend like we don't also have a pretty strong radio presence. We've been advertising on the radio for 10 years, I want to say, maybe even longer, primarily on 2 AM stations. And that has been consistent. And that is about bringing in more business for our current agents and to spread our business model. There are still a lot of consumers out there who don't realize that they have an option when it comes to how much they are going to pay a realtor to sell their home or help to buy a home. So it's about informing, and the radio ads have worked well for us that way as well.
The power of a referral is multi-layered. It's essentially free marketing. And I'm putting the free in air quotes because let's not forget, it takes years to develop, but it's worth the investment. You've spent this time building trust. You figured out the thing behind the thing for your product. Like, what is it in my value proposition that really gets people to like me? In Angela's case, she's discovered she's selling a relationship. And then leveraging those relationships, because referrals are essentially one person telling another, hey, MKE Business Coach is trustworthy. You can trust them to do the right thing and solve the problems that you're bringing them on to do. You can't buy that type of marketing. I can tell you the message myself. It's a different category when someone refers and says, I've had this experience. I know these people, and I think it should move forward. We buy from people we know, like, and trust. So build that up. It's phenomenal. It's one of the greatest ways to be able to get new clients. I went on to ask the question that you can imagine you'll be wondering. You've got 2 businesses, you've got a family. Angela, how do you juggle it all? This could be a challenge for any of us. We don't necessarily have to have 2 businesses, but the goal of juggling all the things and being able to still come out with our sanity intact is really critical. Let's listen to her response.
I have been a big proponent for a long time of time blocking. It's something that I train my agents on, is carving out time in your calendar and sticking to what you said you were going to do. Doing some of the hardest things, the most time consuming things first thing in the morning so that your mind is freed to work on other things during the day. So time blocking is huge. I had kind of this moment of reflection a few years ago, maybe 5 years ago now that I think about it, where I said, the reason I got in this business was to spend time with my kids and be flexible with my time. So I can't let this business take over that. It's the whole reason I'm here. It's the whole reason I'm doing what I'm doing. So if I'm not protecting my time and I'm not blocking out my time, that could take over because I'm always thinking of different things, new things, better things. I could easily, with no other commitments, work 16 hours a day, every day a week, because there's just always something more I could be doing, could be growing. And I have to tell myself, you're done at this time, and this is when you're going home. And my email response, it says, these are my business hours. After my business hours, it's reserved for family time. And anybody who doesn't understand that, respect that, moving on, because the whole reason I'm doing this business is for my family. Having support is a big part of it because my husband and I came to an agreement on our schedule a few years ago where I get 2 days a week where I can start as early as I want, I can work as long as I want, and he's got it covered. And then the other 2 days a week, it's vice versa. And then I have 1 day a week that's kind of like a flex time. So it allows me the flexibility of knowing I got these 2 days that I can do whatever I need to get done. Those are usually when I schedule my appointments and things like that. So that I know the other 2 days that are more limited in time, I'm typically at the computer all day long, working, working, working. But there's a firm beginning time and end time.
Time blocking. This is essentially, we're literally going into our calendar and we are blocking it off so other people cannot put time on there. And we're not just being like open for projects. That doesn't count. What exactly you're going to get done. And I recommend if you block off a half hour, assign it a half hour's worth of work. Don't try and stick 4 hours in there. It's going to end up being defeating. The goal is that we're getting things done that need to get done in priority. And one more piece that I want to encourage you to do, don't just stack hard thing after hard thing after hard thing. It's actually really hard for our brains to stay focused on that. Take a little break in there and put in something that's actually going to be fun and rejuvenating and break some of those pieces up. One of the pieces that is not embraced nearly enough are boundaries. She's remembering, why did I get into this? I got into this because in part time she wanted to spend with her family, maybe personal goals that she had. You've got to figure out what it is for you and then put boundaries around it. It does us absolutely no good to put all the sweat, blood, and tears into building this business and making it amazing and continue to figure out how can I make it grow to the next level. And then we're not able to actually reap the fruit of that by doing the things we wanted to. Maybe it's traveling around the world. Maybe it's time with family. Maybe it's having a retirement that you always wanted. I don't know what your personal goals are, but put boundaries in place. Put the boundaries in place so you can find time progressively throughout the year. I'm going to conclude the conversation with Angela and ask her about support network. We talked a lot about relationships. Support is absolutely essential. Let's hear what she has to say.
My husband is a big one, but also became part of the Women's Council of Realtors in 2010, I believe it was. It was right after I bought the company because I was searching for a community of other people who were in a similar situation and just support. Because as the owner of a company, especially without a franchise or a corporation around you, you're in charge of everything. And who are you going to talk to? Who are you going to bounce things off of? Who are you going to get advice from? And I found that in the Women's Council of Realtors. They provided an opportunity for me to take on leadership roles on their board and serving as president for 2 years, and meeting other like-minded individuals really kind of takes away that loneliness. And some of my best friends today are people that I've met through that network. And that's also part of how I built my network in Florida as well. So it was through their Cape Coral Fort Myers network. So it's huge. I can't imagine doing it without the support of those communities.
I love this. Angela surrounded herself with like-minded business owners. This is so essential. We got to find people to bounce ideas off of, to help with loneliness. There's absolutely nothing like it. It's one of the reasons I wanted to start Entrepreneur Encounters. I want us to be able to meet and understand that there are other folks out there in similar situations that we are. Go out and find your people, make those connections. So well done, Angela. a great job surrounding yourself with support. Well, like you, I cannot do this on my own. There are so many people who contribute to be able to bring this amazing product to you. If you like what you hear, I do want to encourage you, please like, subscribe, share, and comment. I'm Brent Halfwasson, owner of MKE Business Coach, and I want to remind you that being a growth company means upgrading your current business. See you next time.